cameras going.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
fine. We'll get them turned off as the show.
We'll just
starts
talk to people and find out.
Yeah, we want to get to Dunn on here. We want to get
These people are just sitting here
Javier
waiting.
Ramos.
Look, these people need to start sharing this video.
Here we go.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we're live now. Yeah, what's up?
Are we live now?
Orange blood first.
No
Okay,
way.
well,
How
That's
does
what he
do
says. He said first.
All right,
Congratulations, Orange
This
blood.
is not a legit part of the show here.
It is
guys.
totally legit. What's up to Dunn?
Well,
Glad to Dunn's here. Faithful Word Baptist, 1611.
Right.
God bless you, sir. Good to see you here. We're just going to start the show a little early where we forced Paul to turn on the stream machine. And we're just, we wanted to have, we wanted to have a little
some
fun.
realness here,
Yeah, see what it's like.
So with the air
Maybe you can
conditioners
see
on.
Paul
and,
screaming at me, You never know. It could get weird.
All right.
So yeah, the
Can you hear
AC,
me?
because it's 110, so it's 110 in Arizona, if you don't know right now. It's crazy hot outside.
Yeah.
And we're in the attic, right? So it's a two-story
literal
studio.
attic.
And we're a literal attic. So me and him, it's like you're going to see me by the end of the day, just sweat pouring down. And so we have this
It's
little
real nice in
room,
here right now.
like AC.
I
wish you could show the camera to the AC.
Yeah, I don't-
barely keeps the heat at bay. But as soon as the show turns on, we have to turn it off. So it gets crazy hot up in here. And Paul's computer that he wants me to pull up all these videos and stuff on.
It overheats.
No, it doesn't. Stops working half the way through the show.
All right, Dustin, I'm gonna come down and turn on your lights.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Wait, can you even hear me?
Yeah, we got you,
can
Dustin.
hear you.
Okay, I didn't know.
So Dustin's wife hooked us up today with some homemade coffee. Very, very excited about that. Very good.
Homemade coffee,
Okay,
hard
yeah.
to come
So-
by.
Not only iced coffee, but also iced ice cube. That's next level.
Did I get one,
Coffee.
or is it just
Coffee
you?
ice
Is it just
You didn't get
the
one.
chosen?
This is just a choice.
Okay, so it's 88 degrees in this room right now.
As of now.
Pretty good.
It's
So it's gonna
nice.
get
It's-
up to 107.
It will
I
get
think.
at least 107.
Yeah. So
And a bucket of ice would be nice. You
Okay.
guys should just put your feet
here,
in.
let's.
Yeah, to Dunn's a bucket of ice. It would be nice to Dun, right?
All right.
Hey, to Dun, how
Polish people.
hot does it get in Poland? What's the hottest it gets there? Is it more humid over there in the summertime?
It's a delay. I
That's
went
all
to
right.
Poland. I went to Poland in what year was it?
How long were you there for?
3 weeks.
cool. What's
Yeah.
the most Polish thing you did there?
Drank vodka. Drank vodka, which is I don't know, man. Homemade vodka.
That sounds pretty Polish.
It's totally.
I don't know. I'm
I-
besmirching
'Cause
the
he
nation
asked
of
me during-
Poland as drunkards. Sorry, my
Yeah,
apologies.
no, because everybody has their
Their own recipe.
yeah. Everybody
Okay.
go there and they so this is how it is. So I had a girlfriend that was Polish, and we went over there. We were living in Norway, and we went over to visit her aunts and cousins and stuff like that. And so we went to Kielce.
Are we gonna kill the ACs?
I don't know. People,
No.
who cares? Maybe when we do the interview for sure.
Yeah, no, we'll turn
No.
them off.
Okay.
Yeah. What
We
are you
gotta
trying to
have-
do,
there's
man?
gotta
Are you
be
trying to
some-
win?
So
Yeah.
have some
Come
AC on right now.
Yeah, it's fine.
You're are you trying to win some kind of
Well, I'm just making-
award or
oh,
something?
I don't have
and
my
for
light
sound
on.
engineering.
Hey, I
Paul
gotta turn my
Wittenberg.
light
I'll turn it on. I'll turn it on. You
Okay.
stay there.
So you don't know how to work this light, though, man.
Oh, it's a new light.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so who cares about the light? Let me tell
Well,
you
you
about
just
how.
follow
All right, tell us your story. Don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything. Okay. All right, don't touch anything. Paul's
All right.
very particular. Don't want to mess anything up.
Yeah.
So we're excited for this show. I'm excited for Mr. Gage, Mr. Richard Gage coming on.
Yeah, totally.
The architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth. That should be awesome. Shout out to Rodney. I don't know if you're listening, brother, but thanks for the ride here, man. Appreciate it.
What do you mean?
Hope you
Rodney,
enjoyed the
that's
show.
Uber driver.
Rodney had an Uber driver. Had a
You guys had an
sweet-
Uber driver take
Yeah,
you?
had a sweet black Ford Taurus.
How much
Man,
did that cost you?
I don't know. Dustin
Well,
paid for it,
12
so I'm
how
living,
much was-
I'm
how
living
much was-
easy right
How
now.
much was it?
But I threw him a $5, so.
$12.90, so it cost $20 to get over here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, so I was.
Hold on, I'm checking this camera angle. That looks good. It looks much better today, man.
So
This is what-
let me tell my Poland
good
story.
night.
Good grief, man! You're just talking about lights.
What's
and
up,
stuff.
brother Jay Stu?
I just want to say, so when you go over there, it's a very nice thing about the Polish people is that when you get there, everybody you sit down, man. It's just they have cake and cookies on deck, ready to go, man.
In Poland, they're just sweets.
Anybody's
are just there.
house, we would
Nice.
just spend it. We would just stop in and be like, hey, and they would be like, "Oh, so nice to see you." And I didn't speak. I spoke a lick of Polish, which I probably
A lick?
Just one lick.
Just one lick of Polish?
Yeah, I did barely, and so I would just sit, and she would just catch up with all of her aunts and uncles and cousins, and a lot of the younger generation spoke English, so that would be cool. So they would ask me a million questions.
Okay, this is not the legitimate show here, guys. This is a pre-show.
They know.
There's more tuning in.
You're messing up his flow. I want to hear about these cookies they brought out.
Well,
what kind of cookies were they? Were they
taking
powdered
a
cookies?
really long time to tell this
Okay,
story.
Paul, we're changing places now, man.
Yeah.
You come down here, Paul.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead.
Let's switch.
It's all you, man.
Let's switch.
M.G. That's a funny joke. I like that.
Yeah.
9/11 was an inside job. 7-Eleven was a part-time job.
Good for you. It's good. I like it.
You never heard that one before?
I've never heard that one. No.
That's kind of like the coronavirus won't last long. It was made in China.
I like it.
I don't know why it's not coming on the screen though.
I like the one I told in the very beginning to my
yeah,
wife.
here it is.
I was like, I have a coronavirus joke. I want to tell you. But, nah, you probably won't get it.
What in the world?
Work on the delivery.
The delivery was fine.
Yeah. Let's try that again.
I don't want to try it again. It's ruined. And then you commented on it, so I can't say it anymore.
Okay. I've got a coronavirus joke.
Are you
Yeah, what is it?
gonna finish your story?
That's how it works. You need somebody to say, what is it? What is it? Yeah, you won't get it. That's how it goes.
Oh, thanks.
You see?
Thanks. No, I can take the critique.
Yeah, because you have
Move
to
on
wait
with
for
my
it's timing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
COVID-19 Certificate of Vaccination Identification Program. 19 was an inside job. Looking forward to tonight's show. So the reason, usually Paul is ready. He's got all of his stuff queued up. We start at 4:45 Greenwich Mean Time, like 00 minus 9 hours or whatever it is. And he's got an atomic clock. Thank you very much for setting the clock over there, by the way, Paul. I appreciate that. And
Is it Arizona time or Central time?
it's 4:37 here. It's the same as everything else here. So yeah, let me go ahead and plug in. So Paul usually has everything going, and then he's got everything laid out, and then we get going. So now we just showed up, and usually I take a little time to set up, but today's a Saturday, so
Yeah,
we had all
a little
day.
fun.
Yeah.
Because we were having fun last night. We were just kind of rapping and talking, and then Paul shut us down. And we had people hanging out, and so we're like, well, hey, we'll just do it on the front end tonight. We'll just kind of chat and see what people are
Talk
up
about
to.
nothing.
Yep, talk about nothing.
Well,
Say hi to the people tuning in.
if you're just tuning in right now, this air conditioner is a temporary deal here.
Yeah, people are not complaining about the air conditioner. I've actually had one person say keep it on. So
Keep it on.
I'd say keep it on.
They're crazy if I'm going to keep that on. We're going to die up here for good audio.
Do it for the audio. Do it for the audio. What's up, Andrew H? Glad tuning in.
Andrew, is that your buddy?
Hey
No.
guys, make sure to share this on
Your social
your
media?
social media. We're going to be starting here in about 7
real?
minutes.
Is that when we get serious? We'll buckle down and talk about the real issues.
All right. Well,
Now,
So I want to have a. Dustin just mentioned my buddy Andrew. So I don't think no one's seen him. He's come up and hung out on the
hasn't
couch.
gone.
I don't think he's been on TV.
Yeah.
We want to have him in. There's a lot of people talk about. We've had some people talk about the CBD stuff and about is CBD good for you or not. And some of the healthcare professionals we've had on have promoted the CBD use. He's got a really interesting take on it that we'd like to have him into the show. He actually was a let's just say he paid a lot of money to a I don't know if it's a biologist. He paid a lot of money to a scientist at ASU Labs to break down the CBD molecule and kind of everything that goes into that, and was really explaining how they were showing that it's such a macro level of CBD, how it affects your brain and all the receptors, that it's just kind of chucking stuff in there, and it's not all the specific strength, like things that it can, like there's a possibility that you could isolate certain parts of the CBD to help certain health aspects, but it's not there. Like it's so early in the stage, and the science isn't being done. There's no one that's going in and spending the money to break it down and do the hard science of trying to isolate everything about CBD. And so he's got
Whatever
an interesting
happened
take.
to just like 20 people, 10 people take it, 10 people don't? How do you feel?
No, they have to break down on a molecular level of how, because it's such a macro thing, because it's just hitting, you have so many receptors in your brain, and so it's hitting, it's just kind of like a mass effect. It's just like a shock, it's just kind of shooting everything. And so it's not, you're just kind of getting this blanket thing. It's not, people say it's all for all these issues I have, but it's not, you can't, it has a possibility of breaking in on each one, but the science isn't there where they've broken it down to isolate it. And so they're claiming that they've done that, but they haven't. And so it'd be interesting we want to get him and the scientist that he had that did all the work to come in and talk about that.
Listen, if some kid's got cancer and you give him some CBD oil or whatever, and it helps him feel better,
yeah,
what do you need all that science for?
Well, because I think it's because they're pitching it as it's not.
This like DMSO, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they do all that test on that, but it's kind of what it does is it generates the response in your body, and I think it probably does different things depending on the application, right?
Well, I think it's kind of similar to how they've done a lot of on the THC side of cannabis. Like they've been able to isolate it down, so you have like Charlotte's Web, right? So for a small child that has seizures, they've been able to take a lot of the THC out of the cannabis and have a high CBD effect, and so she's able to get the physical benefits of cannabis without the psychoactive part to it. So there's science that happens, and I think, and that's the point that he was making, is that CBD it's so new right now, and people are just kind of using it as like a catchphrase, and they're just kind of, there's a lot, if you've tell like the last year, there's been a huge market push of CBD products. It's like everywhere. You can get it in gas stations now.
So let's just think about this for a second. So if people have been for 2 years, right, since it's been, you've seen these signs on the street. I don't know, but I know that one of my friends does massage, and he's like, hey, take some of this stuff, and it smells like a hippie, and you can smell that, and so those have been out there, and you've been able to pick it up at the corner store and be able to do that. But I mean, is that why America is crazier?
All right,
today?
let's wrap this down. Let's wrap this down. We got 2 minutes here before we go.
What are you talking about? The guest doesn't come on for a little while, right?
No, but we're gonna start the show because I'm clipping all this off.
Oh man,
Yeah,
we're just having a good time. You know what? I have to say, Paul Atkins.
I'm going to continually
Paul Atkins, I
refer
don't
to what I'm
appreciate
saying right
your
now.
little comment about my shirt. Okay.
what, wrinkles are us?
Yeah. You know what?
Wow.
I don't appreciate it. Why don't you keep that to yourself?
Hey, but you know
okay?
what?
Constructive criticism.
Do you see?
Do you know how big I am?
Baptist
You know how long
truther?
it takes to iron a shirt for me?
Talking
It's
about
ridiculous.
sounds like someone's blowing on the mic.
Yeah.
That's what Baptist Truther said.
Well, you know what, Ramon? You know what it's like up here. It's freaking hot. Okay.
All right, I'm shutting off the AC. We're starting in 2 minutes, guys.
It's getting real now.
Guys, make sure to share
What's
this
up,
on your
Brandon
Facebook.
Clark?
And this is going to be a great stream tonight. And someone asked about the update on the 10th film. I'll talk about that in the intro here.
Yeah, before you go live with the thing, that's my wrist, man. Look at that. Somebody was asking how.
Yeah, they were asking, how's your arm doing? Do you think the DMSO helped it?
Yeah, I think so. Look at
Nice.
that, man. Dude, that's gonna be.
You should have had a gnarly blister on there. Did it blister up last night or no?
It probably will soon.
It doesn't look like it's going to.
Dude, looks like.
Hey, can you shut up that AC down there?
Yeah.
We're all gonna suffer now.
Paul thinks I shut the air conditioning off when we do the show. So, all right, Paul, go ahead and clip this part here. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in and joining us. And we thank you for allowing us to sit here and just go back and forth and entertain you with, I don't know what we're doing, but.
All right.
So we're going to interview this fella here. His name is Richard Gage. AIA, which I believe is a short. Is that your air conditioning? Okay, you just muted yourselves. I was
Yeah.
like, man, you turned it off. That thing went dead silent. So AIA is for he's a member of the American Institute of Architects. Is that why it's after his name, Paul? Yep.
Architects and engineers for
9/11
Truth.
Truth.
That's what you're talking about?
No, so AIA means American Institute of Architects. That's why he has AIA after his name.
Gotcha.
It's not like
certification.
Yeah, is that what it is, Paul?
I'm not sure.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
He writes a specific note. All right, we're starting here, Dustin. All right, back up here a little bit.
So to talk. Yeah.
All right, guys, welcome to Framing the World Live. I really appreciate everyone tuning in to today's program. We're going to be talking with Richard Gage today. He is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. It's going to be an awesome interview today. Make sure you guys share this on your social media accounts and support us on this show. We really want to get this information out to as many people as possible. So if you can share this video on your social media accounts, that would be much appreciative. And also, guys, don't forget to support Our House. Our House is the sponsor of today's program. She makes great content. And is anyone pulling that up?
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
She makes great content. I really hope you guys go over to Our House YouTube channel. Just type in Karen Rodriguez Our House into YouTube, and it'll pull up there. But I really appreciate all her hard work on helping us with the thumbnails and helping us get this show more streamlined. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this show better, every day. So, the thumbnails definitely help, and I would be very sad if she stopped doing it. So, I really appreciate her helping out the show, doing that. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button. There's 50 people already tuning in and only 22 thumbs up. So thumbs up this video, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Logan, can you pull up our Patreon real quick?
So go ahead over to Our House there on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell.
Yeah, ring that bell.
And this is what I want you to do, is when you get notified, having rung the bell with all notifications, whatever you're doing, man, you just open up the video real quick, hit like, and if you want to listen to it, listen to it. But if not, then just, go on to something else. But, go ahead and help her channel out and be support there. But if you listen, I'm sure you'll have a fun time and enjoy what she's putting out.
Yeah, and you guys, you got to ring the bell, because a lot of people are commenting, I didn't get notified about this show. Well, if you don't ring the bell, you're not going to get notified. And another way to get notified about the show is if you support us on Patreon. So everyone that supports us on Patreon, we send out an email every time we go live. And we do special Patreon-only live streams as well. So if you want to be in on those Patreon-only live streams, make sure to go over there. It's just $5 a month, guys, and you really make a huge difference. We're $13 down this month on Patreon. So I'm not sure. What?
You went backwards?
Yeah, we went backwards this month.
Man,
yeah,
that's an Uber ride.
So it's been we have like 20 new Patreon supporters, but somehow we went backwards in the support. So if you're out there listening and you haven't yet supported us on Patreon, go head over there and support us on Patreon. It is very appreciative. But yeah, we're talking with Richard Gage, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. He's just a really neat guy. I guess he doesn't have it pulled up. So
Who?
Logan.
Oh.
I had it pulled up. I guess he.
Yeah, I thought you had it.
I had it on.
My apologies. I thought you had it, and then
I did
now
have
I
it
can't
pulled
find
up.
it.
It's on the first tab.
Here it is.
There
Right
you
here.
go. It's good night.
There you go.
So yeah, head over to ae911truth.org and check out their website there. He's definitely doing a lot on this. He's been doing it for years and years. I know I had a lot of conversations with him 10 years ago. But maybe if Logan would pull up an actual part of the website that makes sense. we could go to it. Click on anything, like the home button. Maybe start there.
So what happened, Paul, is you probably angered somebody who was like one of your big supporters, man. Or maybe they lost their job or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, this is just as much as I want to. And, you know,
Look,
and then you're shaming them.
I think Logan finally figured it out how to do this website here. So there's their website. Head over there because they have a new movie coming out called Seven. And so you can check that trailer out on their website. It's a fantastic movie. But are you looking forward to this interview today, Dustin?
Not entirely, somewhat. Just because I think the guy's done so many interviews, I don't want to come off really bad. So I got a lot of notes here, just pages of notes.
You're gonna do great, man.
You highlighted these things. I don't understand why other parts aren't highlighted. So
You're supposed to read it.
yeah. So okay, all right. Now we'll make it work. So you're the boss, Paul. I'll just read the highlighted parts here. I get that. Okay. And we'll do the we'll make sure everybody knows who he is. We'll do a good longer introduction for him. So back to what I was saying before our show started. And we had a little pre-show, and I was telling about how I went to Poland and how when you go to Poland, everybody's like really very gracious host. And so, or everybody, at least it was our a friend's family that, you know, so it was her aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff like that. But, you know, that they just put out a whole spread, and then everybody, it seems like, or maybe it was just her family was just into this vodka making. So they like, everybody had like total flavored vodka, like that was their thing, and they just kept it there. And the cake came out, and the cookies came out, and all the sweets. And then like, and so they had to like have their vodka too. And then he always drank tea. But I had been to Kielce and Krakow, I guess you say it. Warsaw, Warszawa, and it's Placomkowa. That's in Warsaw. And Zakopane. So those are the areas I went, and you know, I thought it was really fun. I really liked it. I mean, that was like 18 years or 17 years ago. I could tell you how old I was, but I don't want to feel old. So it was a long time ago, and I thought it was really cool. I'm glad I made the trip and got to see that. And
well, you're the elder in the room.
yes. And so,
Thanks for confirming that, Paul. In case you didn't know.
So when I come up the steps, you guys are gonna rise when I walk through the room. So yeah, but you know, one of the cool things is in Zakopane they had these it's like this mountain ski town, and they had these like you would go up and down the streets, and you know you ever see those people? They paint these pictures with spray paint, and they get the poster board out. I know you guys have seen this because I've seen it in Las Vegas, and I've seen it in L.A. and on the, you know,
They're just doing like spray paint art.
yeah,
you're
they're
talking about on the
spray
side of the road?
painting.
Yeah.
And then they're like sitting there, and their hands are all just covered with paint, and they're smearing it, and they're like taking the coffee cup and spraying it. And then they got the paper plates, and then they're flipping it around and turning all this stuff, and then you pull it away, and it's like some scene where it's like some alien planet, and it's got mountains and all these stars and big supernovas and all that stuff. Ever seen those types of paintings?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They're done with spray paint, and then when they're all done, they like torch it they take the they light the spray paint, and then they create like a torch, and they heat it, and then that's kind of how they set it. So you know, they're doing that on the street. So you're walking down the street, and I remember saying, "Oh, I love this. I've seen that before." And the guy's like, "No, this is me. I invented this." You know, I'm like, "No, because I've seen it. I saw it like 6 months ago in Las Vegas." "No, impossible. This is my design." And I'm like, "Dude, he does it the exact same way with every part of it."
Like the exact same painting and everything?
Well, yeah, because there's only so many scenes
Right. You can do, right?
Yeah. So, but I bought these slippers, these sheepskin slippers that I still have, man. They're awesome. Like, but go to Zakopane and get some of these slippers.
When was this, Dustin?
is like,
he doesn't want to date himself.
No, it's like 2003 or something.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just so long.
Where do we get on this conversation?
You weren't listening.
Oh, okay.
You kept interrupting me when I was trying to tell people the story before.
He's like,
is this a previous story?
He was talking about it in the pre-chat, and he brought it into the real show.
Oh.
Yeah, so the people that tune in later aren't gonna.
Yeah, and just out of spite, I brought it back up because I want people to know that there was a pre-show, and that
Yeah.
Paul has deemed that you do not get to listen to it.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
Yeah.
you can back up though. You can back up, but don't do that. Stay with us live. So so it was just like a 2003, and got the slippers. And if you go back to Zakopane, let me know. Send me an email. I'll give you my shoe size. It's the European, size and stuff. Pick me up a pair of slippers. You'll be my buddy forever.
So Paul wants to make sure everybody knows we're talking 9/11 truth tonight. I'm sure eventually we'll talk about some more current events of what's going on. But with the sorry, I had you muted here, Paul. With the protests, because like the whole nation's on fire right now. Like almost every major city has these protests. Even in Phoenix, just a few miles away, they were busting out windows and smashing cop cars and stuff. But we're talking about 9/11 truth tonight, which is always a fun topic, always interesting. And so if you guys have questions, put them in the chat. Call us on the phone. What's the new phone number, Paul?
480-519-4999. And we are also trying to get, if you were in New York during 9/11, if you're an eyewitness of the account of the buildings falling down or any part of that day, call into the show after this interview. We'd love to hear from you. 480-519-4999. The last show we had a caller call in, and it was just awesome to hear his testimony of that day. So call into the show. We'd love to hear you. And, of course, we'll talk about the current events. But we want to keep the show.
Listen to this.
We want to keep the show not about Warsaw or anything. We want to keep it. We want to keep it geared to 9/11 tonight because Richard's gonna hopefully post this on his page, and we don't want to be talking about a bunch of other things.
All right. Well, now I was going to tell you about how the guy George
tell us.
Floyd, dude had a twin.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Steven Jackson, twin quotes.
Oh man.
What in the world?
Show his page. He's looking at.
Yeah, he's a twin. Dude, I think that's
interesting.
I don't believe anything that's on the news. I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't believe any of this stuff.
Me and we love. I love
go ahead,
every time
9/11 truth. You guys want to sit around, and I'm just gonna go ahead and jerk the steering wheel now.
I'm just gonna let everybody know. Every show we do, like me and Dustin have like a compress, or where we like just talk about the show for like the half-hour ride I have back home. And I'm like, man, this is the show right here. Like, this is where it's like down the nitty gritty. Like, we really get into it. Like, man, people want to hear this stuff right now.
This is the topic that everyone's interested in right now.
Yeah, but the thing is,
forget coronavirus. Coronavirus is dead.
Yeah, Paul,
man.
yeah. So every time I'm like, well, this was on. Dustin's like, no, I don't believe any of it. It's all made up.
Dude,
he wasn't real.
Yeah, because like, I heard that the neighbors of the police officer, and you guys can be like, no, it's not true. Like, dude. Like, look up crisis actors, people. You're like, oh, you're one of those crisis actors. I mean, you don't even believe planes hit the towers. I don't even care about any of the planes hitting the towers. I know that they were blown up. Let's just leave it there. So, but I know Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset.
That is true.
Tim Osmond, right? So, like, he's an actor. And you know who an actor is? An actor is somebody who goes in and they pretend and say and do things that is not their reality. So they get on there, and they could be a woman and a mom, and from Cincinnati, Ohio, and then go on a TV show and play a mom who's a wife in Cincinnati, Ohio, and just pretend, and that's called acting. But that's who she is and what she does. But so you can have these politicians up there, and these even news reports, believe it or not, and CIA people who get up there and they present something and they make a video, and then they put it on the news. And of course, we know that the news no, I'm not going to use any sarcasm. The news has no journalistic integrity. No journalistic integrity.
They had to like have like court cases that the CIA couldn't be involved in the news. Like they had to like tell the CIA, like, you can't,
Yeah,
you have
stay
to
out of the
stop.
news.
You have to
But
stop
they
paying
still
these journalists
are.
to put.
They
Yeah, of course
totally
they still are.
are.
So like, yeah, all the time the news gets busted for staging. You know, like anytime they do those live shots. Those like there's a like
Did you guys
there's
see-
producers, right? There's producers there. They're like, hey, can you stand here? Can you say this? You know, like, or you know, like they're doing an interview, but they're like, hey, say it this way. You know, like change how you frame that. You know.
Did you guys see SpaceX? Did you see the launch today?
We didn't see the. I didn't.
You
watch
didn't
the launch.
watch it?
No.
It was pretty cool. But there's one point that was like, did they just fake that? Because when they were
I'm sure
landing,
the whole thing
so when the
like CGI and fake. Like,
Right,
I'm sure
because
got it all
once they launch it, they land the
They like, that
afterburner.
doesn't
Yeah,
look like Star Wars.
So they land the afterburner, right? And so as it's coming down, they're showing the ship where it's gonna land, and then they cut away to like a. Sorry, the video's not here. Like,
Right.
and then it cuts back. And it's just there
It's
on
there,
the ship,
right.
and I'm
So you
like,
missed-
I'm
you
like,
missed
what they did the last time.
You
That's
missed the main
exactly what
shot.
they did last time.
only 10 seconds. So basically, they show the ship.
Yeah.
They cut to black for 10 seconds, and then they
Right.
cut back, and it's
Yeah, it's
there.
like, come on, guys. Like, that's the whole reason I'm watching this, because I want to see
All
it
right,
land.
Paul, I'm proud of you
What?
that you can see that when they do that kind of stuff, that
Well-
is evidence that they're trying to do wizardry on you, and that they're they're like
It was cool though
It
to
was-
see that.
It was all like
I was
they
just
throw
waiting-
glitter in the air, and you're like, whoa, look at the glitter, and then you go back, and you're like, oh, it landed. I totally missed the whole thing. Darn it, I shouldn't have looked at the glitter. And, you're like,
Yeah.
and then the guy's sitting there with who threw the glitter up. He's
Well, I know a lot of people watch that. It's a crazy amount of people tuned into that live stream.
yeah,
Today. It was cool. We
They were all
all
wearing
sat
their
there as a
mask in their
family
living
and
room.
watched it.
except for you, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not wearing my
You're not
mask.
wearing your mask in your living room, but
But I went to Target today to get some toilet paper, and everybody had a mask on in Target. It was crazy.
anyway, so Steven Jackson is the twin of George Floyd. So he's got a
Why
twin.
is his name different?
You know what? You also want to hear some other like good stuff? Go ahead and since we have our friends listening, when you get some time, not now, go ahead and do Space Shuttle Challenger twins and just or astronauts still alive, all right? And it seems like half of those astronauts, what were there, 9 of them? Like 3 of them have twins that are just doing great. And everybody's living by their middle name as experts in the same field that they were before they were astronauts. So I don't know. If you guys just want to just turn on the TV and somehow trust everything that's coming down as it totally shapes our culture, and forget about just opening up the Bible or looking at something in your real life and living simply around what is real. But we've got this media thing, this whole TV thing that everybody just tunes into, and then we just kind of go. It leads everybody along.
Right. I think Pastor Anderson makes great points about, like we were talking about last night. I used to be like really into like the research, like the police brutality and like getting fired up and going to Tea Party protests and all that stuff. But it's like at a certain point, it's like, what Solomon talks about, like it's vanity of vanity. It's all vanity. Like at the end of the day, like you just got to raise your family and go soul winning and go to church and like affect the people you can. Like it's not worth getting worked up over these. So like it's fun to talk about and chat about and expose what's happening and seeing through it, but you definitely don't want to get you don't want to waste your time. Like you don't want to put extra amount of time in it. Like there's enough going on in your day, in your regular life. Focus on your family, go to church, go soul winning, read your Bible. So
Right. And just to talk about yesterday's show, Paul, that guy would never have taken you out on the boat, no matter how many thousands of dollars.
Right, for real, yeah.
And how many security teams and all of that, because he's made a pact with God that he would never go
Harrison?
out on the sea.
No, see
Mr.
he
Harrison?
works on the ocean now. I don't.
Oh, he's
some-
already working
just
on the
because
ocean?
some random video says
Okay,
that.
all right.
Not everything's real in every video you watch.
Touche.
But yeah, he actually is working on a ship right now. That's why he actually can't do the interview this week, because he has no internet or very bad
If
internet.
I was stuck on the bottom of a ship, I'd make all kinds of promises.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's
I think
probably
we all
thinking,
would,
like,
right?
what are the chances?
Yeah.
He goes, if I go down again, I'll just make sure I find that airpock again. And
Right.
This time well, he probably just wears a life vest. Wherever
You know,
he
he
goes.
might have said that though. right after the event.
Mm-hmm.
But then life sets in and he runs out of money because
you're in Nigeria, Africa.
You're in Nigeria. And you can't really trust those Nigerians anyways.
It was someone in the chat yesterday was like, I know a prince that sent me an email. I bet he could help.
You what? Oh yeah.
It was like, I wasn't sure who just said it, but it was funny.
So did you see that? Didn't I send one of you guys like a meme that was talking about casting and broadcasting? I sent that to Paul, didn't I? Probably.
I don't know,
right.
guys. But
it was a lot like getting people on the hook.
If you're just tuning in
Casting.
now, we're going to be talking with Richard Gage of AIA very soon here. Dustin's going to be calling him in 5 minutes exactly, so he should probably get his
I thought we were
game
going to call him
plan.
at quarter after.
We're going to call him
5:15.
5 minutes before the
We'll
time,
just get him on.
like
I
every
told him
time.
we'd get him online.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah,
5:10.
and then you could do your intro and everything, and then we tee him up so you're
Yeah,
ready
so
for you.
this is what we like to do. We like to talk about the show while we're live because that's the only time we can do this. So basically, we want to call him 5 minutes before, and you want to unplug it so we don't hear it, and get him all queued
Okay,
up. So
gotcha.
then,
So you can do
you
so
can
then
do
he'll
the-
do his intro and be seamless.
without it seeming really weird.
So we're professionals
Yeah,
up here.
come on.
Yeah,
Come on.
so it was a picture. Just I can't do the meme, man. But if you guys saw it, but it's a picture of like this used to be like you're casting a spell and they're doing like casting.
Mhm.
And it's got like witches like doing their whole little witch thing, which pictures say more than 1,000 words. And then so you have casting, and then below, then you have broadcasting, which is basically the news guy. It's like no different. They kind of come in nice with like, hey, let's let you know about the weather and all the good sports and all those things, which is, I wonder what the sports guys do. The news should be like 10 minutes shorter now.
Well, if you think about it, right, like that, I like that when you talk about the words in their meaning, like when you think of broadcasting, like what I think about is a net being cast, and they're just catching up all the fish, that just go along with it,
You're right. I don't think things are accidental like that. So,
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't be like, well, that's exactly what's going on. But I also think, hey, that's a pretty
words
darn
have
simple.
come from
Yeah,
things,
television
too.
programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the place there. And the whole thing is
It's
just
hiding
right
in
there.
plain sight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just right there, under your nose, not even hiding. And so, all right, just so I don't mess up, I got 3 minutes to call this guy.
We're super professional tonight.
Okay, so what else I heard, since we're talking about nothing, what else I heard is that the cop who was filmed sitting on the guy's neck, that he has a twin. No, I'm kidding. But that like they're claiming. This is one video I saw that they were claiming, and I didn't see the video, that the photo of him being booked was an actual booking photo because he looks way younger.
He does look way different in that photo.
And he's
he
not
does.
he's not in
the shape of his ear is different.
Yeah, he's not in a correct setting.
So
what are you saying? Like, how do they even come? Okay, well, did that mean they didn't book him, or that they just have his passport picture, that he took a long time ago, and now they're putting.
They're
that up
probably just trying to respect him a little bit by putting out his nicer picture. I don't know.
I
what?
guess.
That's Paul. You're just like, let me just go ahead and give the benefit of the doubt. I'll help them.
Before we go in, I want to make a comment about.
I didn't make my.
You see a lot. I thought you made it. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
no. I was kind of like, so.
It's always.
So that his neighbors said that they never saw him in uniform and they never saw him with a patrol car. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting on camera. Like you can watch the video. Which you're like, whoa. Okay, so I'm sorry. Now
No, you're good. So there's a lot of Facebook posts and people that are like, that are necessarily pro police, or they're kind of like the new neo-evangelical Christian type, kind of very patriotic and all that. They're kind of like excusing a lot of the cop had his knee on his neck, but that was like he didn't die of asphyxiation, and they're trying to hey, that's an okay hold, like there's nothing wrong with that. If you look at the other shot, there's 3 other guys. So there's another, he's got his left knee on his neck, but he also has his right knee on his back, right? So right on his lungs. Then there's another guy on his lower back, which would be your diaphragm. And there's another guy holding down his legs, right? So you have 200 plus guys on you. I can tell you right now from jiu-jitsu experience, if I put you in a half guard and I can put my body and on your diaphragm and I can make you tap out.
I'm calling the guy now here.
From just the compressing your diaphragm, right? So all three of those cops are responsible for that. It's not like I would just love for the people that are saying like, oh, the cop did nothing wrong, like he was supposed to do that, you know, like the guy's already handcuffed. Let me put my knees in your back and on your chest and like let's see how well you can breathe. It's not like that was not appropriate at all, especially he's already handcuffed. I just want to make that point.
All right, so we're gonna be getting Mr. Gage on the line here in a little bit, but you know, I'm really excited to see the new movie they're making. It's called Seven, and so he's partnered up with Dylan Avery, the same guy that made Loose Change, and so it's gonna hopefully be an amazing film. I really am excited to hear what he has to say about that. But going back to what you were saying, I mean, it's very convenient that they switch. I mean, coronavirus is kind of getting old now, so this came at a very convenient time.
Oh yeah, hot news.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny, I want to know what's going to happen with the masks, because masks are everywhere right now, right? Like you had to wear a mask with the coronavirus, and now like with all these riots, people are wearing these masks, and now the police are having trouble identifying. So I wonder if there's going to be like a flip to it of like, well, you can't wear a mask. It's always interesting, like how they're gonna. I want to see how they're gonna play that with the mask. You know, whether you can't wear it. I want to see what's going to happen with these protests, because it's pretty serious. Like I haven't seen. I mean, when was the last time? I mean, I know that there's riots happen every year, you know, in different cities, but to have it where it's in Portland, Oakland, Phoenix, Denver, Minneapolis, Atlanta.
Is it in that many cities?
It's in that
now?
many cities for sure that I've read about the news today.
Well,
I'm sure it's in more. But where they're not just protests, they're burning down buildings, they're crushing stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Just keep. Yeah. So we're gonna get Mr. Gage on here. We're just getting set up. Paul's running downstairs to get him teed up for you guys. Yeah. So I think we're getting him on the line now. Like I said, if you have any questions, just type it to us in the chat. We'll try, towards the end of the interview, we'll try to write them down and see if we can ask them. And then it should be a great interview, very informative. If you have any comments you want to call in, or shoot us a text message on the phone, it's 480-519-4999. And we love to chat with you guys. We appreciate everyone being on there. Danny Mary just said that there's arrests happening in Nashville, so it's there's a lot. There's protests, and I mean, not even just protests, there's riots going on all over the country. So it's a very interesting time we're living in. So
this is all kind of just happening too at once.
Yep. Paul, am I ready to tee up Dustin?
No, not yet.
Okay. So, yeah, it's we appreciate. You can't see Dustin. That's okay. We can't. No, Paul's got. He's just setting us up. Every time I come in the studio, there's like new equipment. There's new lighting. It's like a change every time. It's like better and better. There used to be a window here, but now Paul put some film behind it, so we can't see Dustin now.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. Like, I keep getting it set up, and then I have to film something somewhere else. So I have to tear down all the lighting, go film something else, and then bring it back, and then I change it, and then it's like, it's just a never-ending cycle. And then I always do it last minute, and then you guys show up like 5 seconds before we start.
We do show up super last minute.
So I can't ever test anything until like we're live.
Dustin's a super pro. It's very impressive how he does it. Like because I'll usually get here around 4:30ish. And then sometimes, Dustin's like literally rolling in like straight from work, like taking his work shirt off, putting another shirt on, and just like doing a super pro interview with a guest, in a matter of minutes. No. So we're
Well, my mom even told me that they were doing protests here in Arizona, but I never.
Yeah, no,
saw
they're in Phoenix.
You
So last night, they were surrounding the police building in downtown, and then they went and they started. So they were protesting in front of the police. They had all the riot gear out, and then they went. They were just kind of like roaming the city. They smashed up a couple of cop car SUVs that were just kind of parked on the road, and the police had to chuck out tear gas. And they were breaking up windows in different federal buildings around town, and graffitiing everywhere. So it's a very interesting time. And I forget, I don't know if it's a Minneapolis. Someone was posting in the city that they had we were talking about a little bit about agent provocateurs yesterday. Like the guy that was smashing the windows of the AutoZone before really any property damage was done. He was like the first one that did that, right? They kind of set people up.
Are you saying the guy that looked like the cop?
Right, but there's another. Someone made a post where there's like a pallet of bricks that have no business over there. There's no construction going on.
Weird, huh?
Just a pallet of bricks, totally normal. For right where there's protests is happening. It's like, well, what's that about? Why are these here? So they're just like broken bricks, just kind of like right there, ready for people to chuck and grow. So it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with all this. Because you're right. Because you don't hear, like when I pull up my news feed, like the news sites I look at, there's no more coronavirus talk. It's buried. It's all about the protests going on. They're
well, this is much more
White House.
Interesting than the coronavirus.
Yeah, I was kind of over it. Like we talk about it. We it was getting a little old. Like it was a little frustrating talking about it. Like and it's like even in our live, like I don't mind talking about on the show. It's fun. It's to talk about the different things that are going on. But it was frustrating. Like we had a dinner party the other night. And all of our friends from church are there. We were just like, we were laughing, having a great time. We were cracking up, eating good food, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, someone brought up coronavirus, and then it was like, that's over. And there was just coronavirus talk, and I'm not going to wear the mask, or I'm going to wear it, but say, like, it was just totally kind of killed the vibe. And me and my wife just kind of looked at each other like, well, it's about 9 o'clock. We're ready to get out of here. So it's a bummer that it just kind of like invades your life. Like you have like a sense of normalcy and talking about just life and fun stuff about life, and then it's kind of like takes over the conversation, like and take over the whole mood and conversation. It is what it is, I guess. Danny America says in Dallas, full riot gear, guys arrested with pizza on his hat, all kinds of gear in a backpack. Pizza,
well,
I think the little Pizzagate reference. Yeah, the bricks are in Dallas, Pizza Guy in Nashville
now too.
Oh, for sure. The national. It's when you get National Guard in there, that's serious. Like when you have military going in there. Because the riots are so bad.
What do you think about the curfews?
What's my opinion on the curfew?
What's your opinion on all the curfews? Because I think it's almost necessary in this kind of an issue. But what do you think?
So if you have a city, like what are you supposed to do? I guess as a leader of a city. And I have all
burning down.
I have all these. Yeah, my buildings are burning down. My police are in riot gear, trying to control, thousands of people.
Burning down police stations.
Burning down police station. I've never seen that before in my life.
Yeah.
Have I ever heard of them burning down a police station, like chasing the cops out of it? That was wild.
Yeah.
Like what do you?
I just feel bad about all the shop owners that lost their businesses.
Yeah.
Did you see the videos of the shop owners saying like?
I remember there's a famous video of. When the Rodney King riots happened, of a black gentleman, store owner that he had saved up his entire life's work was in this small store.
Yeah.
And he's out there just with passion, screaming at the people because they just robbed him of everything, and he's screaming at him of like, why would you do this? Like I'm with you. Like you're my people. Why would you destroy like my entire life's work? I've been in this community for decades serving you. Like why would you do this to me? So it's but it's frustrating too because it's they create this black and white divide on us, and it's made to divide us. Like when all the when the thing was going on with I can't breathe, like the first I can't breathe that was real famous that got people to riot before that happened to I forget the gentleman's name that passed away in New York that gave him in the chokehold. America was starting to wake up of like, hey, like this police brutality thing is like pretty serious. Like, why does my police station have an MRAP vehicle? Like, why do they have this like military assault like straight from Iraq and Afghanistan? Why is the government giving all my local police all this military hardware? And like regular America was kind of waking up to that of like, this is not right. And then they had the Ferguson thing happen, and then they switched there. That's when you had Black Lives Matter, and they completely overrode the narrative of its American citizens versus corrupt police and abusive police to black and white. No, it's black and white. Like, how could this white cop and this poor black guy? But it's like they use that to take away the real narrative of our right, that we shouldn't be abused by a higher, by this authority that kind of can just roll around and harass you. Are we?
I think we're ready,
to
man.
go?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We've got Mr. Gage with us. So, all right, Paul. Did you want to start from the top?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight on Framing the World Live. We've got another awesome interview set up for you today. We hope you really enjoy our next guest. Tonight on the show with us, we have Richard Gage, AIA. Richard Gage, he is a 30-year San Francisco Bay Area architect and member of the American Institute of Architects. He is the founding member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Mr. Gage became interested in researching the destruction of the World Trade Center high-rises after hearing the startling conclusions of a reluctant 9/11 researcher, David Ray Griffin, on the radio in 2006, which launched his own unyielding quest for the truth about 9/11. AE 9/11 Truth now numbers more than 3,000 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation into the destruction of all three World Trade Center high-rise buildings on 9/11. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Is this Dustin or Paul?
This is me, Dustin.
All right, Dustin. Awesome to be with you.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor. You've done, I don't know how many, probably hundreds of interviews and presentations on this subject. You're an expert about 9/11 and the engineering. You're an architect, right? So around the building structure and what happened that day in New York, 2001. So what is your background before 2001, or how did you tell us about yourself, sir?
Yeah, I worked in various firms in the San Francisco Bay Area for 30 years. Also, most recently, on a large project in Nevada with 6 blocks of mid-rise office space and retail mall, 6 blocks long, and parking structure, altogether about 1,200 tons of fireproof steel framing. That was my most recent project, but I'm now working full-time educating architects, engineers, and others as to what really happened at the World Trade Center.
So do you find that that a lot of the architects and engineers aren't aware, or do you find that many of them have questions and that you're just helping them connect things that they already suspect?
Oh, no, the overwhelming majority of them are completely unaware, not of the Twin Towers, but of the third tower that came down on 9/11, World Trade Center Building 7. So we go all the way around the world, in particular the U.S., though, focusing on conferences, educating architects and engineers that a third skyscraper collapsed on 9/11. They're just flabbergasted when they see at our booth where we have a setup of information in the video showing this collapse of this skyscraper. We show them and we say, what does that look like to you? And they go, oh, it's a controlled demolition. Mm-hmm. Well, did you know is not one of the Twin Towers? And yes, it is a controlled demolition. And yet NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people, said Building 7 came down by normal office fires.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you, in 2006, you were listening to a radio program. You just happened to tune into a radio program with David Ray Griffin, and so what did you hear on that program, and what was inspired by that exactly?
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, I had never heard anything about a third skyscraper that came down. I mean, I'm one of 80,000, now 90,000 architects in the American Institute of Architects. And we have not received one bulletin on this, again, the third worst structural failure after the Twin Towers, being the other two. So I was just shocked to hear this and see this as I went and saw that night. No, 2 nights later, David Ray Griffin spoke at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, and the place was sold out. I mean, I couldn't even get in. I had to go home and watch on this live stream, and it was really quite amazing what I was hearing. And in terms of the Twin Towers, the ends of the beams dripping with molten metal flying out of the towers, trailing thick white smoke clouds. And sure enough, I looked at all this evidence over the next several weeks, and I was just shocked to learn that we've been hoodwinked. The mainstream media censored all this. The American Institute of Architects, the American Society of Civil Engineers has not seen fit to educate their memberships about this. And again, especially this third tower. I mean, after witnesses hear explosions, this third tower at 5:20 in the afternoon drops like a rock straight down, uniformly, symmetrically into its own footprint in the exact manner of classic controlled demolition. It accelerates straight down through the path of what should have been the greatest resistance, and so it should have stopped and maybe fallen over if it was going to collapse at all. But no, as straight down, as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. This is free fall acceleration, and that's been admitted finally by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people.
And so with the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, you began that group, correct? You're the founder?
Yes.
And so
in 2000.
How did that begin, and what's your goal and objective in the end? I know you're out reaching tons of architects and engineers and educating them, but to what end?
Well, I was looking originally for architects and engineers because these are buildings, right? This is our specialty. There should be thousands of architects and engineers talking about this. Well, there were a few scattered architects and engineers, but they weren't organized. Well, we had by this time pilots for 9/11 Truth, scholars for 9/11 Truth, and other organizations. But where were the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth? This is 5 years after 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where are they? So I knew I had to do something, and I guess the burden fell on my shoulders because I couldn't put it down. I was on fire. I said, this is easy because, I looked at the evidence myself. Once I looked at it, I could see clearly there's a real problem here. And so we organized after the Scholars for 9/11 Truth and Justice and the Pilots for 9/11 Truth, Lawyers for 9/11 Truth, put up a petition. So I was the first architect and engineer for 9/11 Truth. We now have 3,000 demanding a new investigation publicly on our petition. And we've given over 700 presentations in 24 countries and around the world, but in more than 100 American cities as well. And so we just keep on going until we can get enough groundswell of public outrage to demand a real investigation of Congress, which is our petition, or throw them all out until we get a Congress that is willing to investigate. So that's what we're about. It's about a new investigation. That's the end.
All right. Now, you mentioned Building 7. So that's a third building that fell, as you mentioned before, at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th. And that building was not struck by an airplane. You mentioned that you saw it, the video of that for the first time in 2006 yourself. Tell us about how that's important to just the 9/11 event itself. Why is that so important, that building?
Well, some in the 9/11 research community, which is millions wide, it's a 9/11 truth movement, really is what it is. Consider this event the smoking gun of 9/11. It's so obviously a controlled demolition. It looks exactly like the old hotels in Las Vegas, and yet they've lied about it very blatantly. In specifically NIST, their 1,000-page report on it, which came out 7 years after 9/11. I mean, saying along the way, truthfully, Sham Sunder says, we've had trouble getting a handle on Building 7. Well, yeah, it's very difficult. No skyscraper has ever collapsed due to fire. And here we have 3 on the same day. The Twin Towers being substantially due to fire because the jet fuel was burned up, 90% of it in the first 10 minutes, according to NIST. The rest of it burned up in, 90% of it outside the building in the initial blast. The rest of it burning up in the next 10 minutes. So there's substantially normal office fires with a few broken columns. But in the case of the Building 7, there's no jet fuel. There's no plane that hit this building. So it is a real case study and a classic controlled demolition, which everybody comes to that conclusion when we show them, specifically architects and engineers. Then they get real interested when they find out that this was put off as a destruction by fire. Well, fires, again, never brought down any steel frame skyscraper or concrete skyscraper, in this case, steel frame.
Yeah, so okay.
Uh-huh.
No, carry on, please.
So this is a really important case study. It should have been the most thoroughly investigated structural collapse in history, because if this building came down due to fire, then we've got hundreds of similarly designed buildings that need to be reinvestigated. The codes need to be overhauled, because we've got now all of a sudden a weakness in our building code system. But none of the recommendations that NIST made for structural engineering modifications to the code were accepted by the International Conference of Building Officials in the ICBO. The International Building Code has not changed its structural recommendations at all. So you see, they know that these buildings are strong, but they don't comment on why they didn't accept any of these recommendations from NIST for structural changes.
Do you know what that building was used for, or who were the tenants?
Sure. It's an office building. It has most of its financial institutions, Solomon Brothers primarily, but it also had the Department of Defense was in there, the CIA's largest headquarters outside of Langley, the Securities and Exchange Commission, where the worst fires were on floors 12 and 13, which lost several hundreds and hundreds of thousands of files related to hundreds of cases of fraud that it was actively pursuing against companies like Enron and WorldCom.
Wow. So there, you'd think, well, those 2 buildings were clearly struck by airplanes, but this third building had some office fires, which may have, I don't know how a building across the street or down the block can cause another building to catch fire. I don't know, but somehow if the fire started naturally. I don't know if I know the the investigation barely touched Building 7. I think they gave it a couple lines or something in the official investigation.
You're referring to the 9/11 Commission report, which had one mention of the building and no mention of its collapse.
Okay.
So that's an incredible omission, highlighted by David Ray Griffin, who's now written 12 books on this subject of 9/11, called 9/11 Commission Omissions and Distortions, for the 9/11 Commission report.
So looking now, anybody can speculate, well, that looks like a controlled demolition, because most of us have never seen buildings fall. So whenever we have seen buildings fall, otherwise it's always been, on the video of the controlled demolition. So we wouldn't know what to compare it to, right? So we're like, oh, that looks like one of those videos I've seen where they blow up the building so they can build a new one, or because it's no longer structurally sound, so they're going to put the charges in it and take it down. But when you're looking at the video, would you say there's any solid evidence besides just saying that looks like a controlled demolition? Would you say that you can perceive and detect evidence of a controlled demolition?
Sure. It's all over the place. First of all, you have witnesses that hear explosions. Kevin McPadden said, it's like a train running underneath my feet, like you wanted to grab onto something. I knew that was an explosion. This is at 5:23 in the afternoon, and then he sees the building coming down. Others saw flashes of light, and there's many of these witnesses of explosions, even explosions before before the building came down in the late morning of 9/11, by firefighters around the corner, by Barry Jennings, Housing Authority, and the attorney of Mayor Giuliani, who they're walking into the building, not realizing that it had been evacuated after the planes hit the towers. But before the towers came down, they're trying to make their way up. They made their way up to the 23rd floor, where the emergency headquarters was, where they're supposed to be operating to run the city in an event, a major emergency such as this. But they were told to get out of there real quick. Somebody knew something, right? And so they're on their way down to the 7th floor, and they said they were blown back up into the 8th floor by explosions. They're hearing explosions throughout the building. The lobby was destroyed by explosions. They said they're walking over dead bodies in the lobby, which is very interesting. There's the only witnesses of explosions inside the building, of having experienced actual explosions. So this is actually quite critical. Barry Jennings lost his life the day before the final report came out on NIST, by the way, blaming this on fires. And so none of these explosions appear in the draft or final reports of NIST. But what we do have in the final report of FEMA, in Appendix C of the Building Performance Assessment Team report, came out in May of 2002, is a metallurgical examination of the steel in Building 7, particularly, as being suffering a hot temperature corrosion attack on the steel. Liquid molten iron invading the steel. Well, liquid molten iron's 28. Steel doesn't even begin to melt until 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 4 times at least as hot as usually the hottest office fire. And so we have plenty of documentation of extreme temperatures, such as the NASA thermal imaging planes that were flying overhead, taking ground temperatures that are exceeding 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's as hot as the hottest office fires typically get. And yet there's no office fire on the surface of Building 7 or the Twin Towers. And yet these temperatures are extremely hot. So what are they measuring? They're measuring much hotter temperatures that are deeper down in the pile that radiate and cool off by the time they reach the surface. They're 1,300 degrees. So what are those temperatures? Well, we have evidence for those temperatures, including pools of molten iron. Molten iron, they call it molten steel. The first responders traveling down the channel rails like lava from a volcano, they say. They have meteorites they were pulling up from the piles of fused molten iron and concrete. That I didn't even know concrete could melt. It takes 3,200 degrees concrete to Fahrenheit to begin to melt concrete. So these are evidence of extreme temperature that cannot be accounted for by jet fuel. First of all, there's no jet fuel in Building 7. But in the case of the Twin Towers, they can't be accounted for by jet fuel either. We're talking about the U.S. Geological Survey finding molten iron microspheres throughout the World Trade Center dust. Up to 6% of the samples are composed of previously molten iron, not steel, microspheres. How do they get to be microspheres? Well, this is quite incredible. What explains all these temperatures? What explains the sulfur documented by FEMA in their Appendix C? Well, if you have thermite, incendiaries, thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. If you have that, it's extremely destructive to steel, of course, as shaped cutter charges, for which there are, by the way, patented devices that are designed to issue molten iron in milliseconds, cutting through much thicker sections of structural steel than typical controlled demolition charges like C4 and RDX can. Well, that under explosive conditions, the issuance of the molten iron is aerosolized, basically. Aerosolized liquids form themselves into spheres. So that can explain the molten iron spheres. The chemical signature of these, as studied by the U.S. Geological Survey and R.J. Lee, find that they're primarily elemental iron, a byproduct of thermite under these conditions. It would be 4,000 degrees, which explains the extreme heat. And the sulfur is explained also by the sulfur is added to thermite. It becomes thermate, much more effective at cutting through steel. So all the evidence is accounted for by the use of thermite cutter charges. None of it is accounted for in the official story by normal office fires, even with the addition of jet fuel. So yes, there's all kinds of evidence here, and we've just begun to touch it.
There's you mentioned before about there's a patent for those types of charges, but they're not commonly used in controlled demolitions today, are they? Those thermite charges?
It'd be very expensive. Incendiary shaped cutter charges are not common, and they would be much more expensive. Plus, we're talking about something else going on here, which is not just ordinary thermite. Why wouldn't they want to use, by the way, C4 or RDX, which is normal? Well, one reason might be because those provide an extremely loud blast and a very bright flash. So those in a deceptive controlled demolition like we're talking about at the World Trade Center towers, they would want to avoid those obvious audio and visual signatures. So they apparently they used thermite. That was their choice here. But not any ordinary thermite, because this team of 8 scientists found something very unusual in all the World Trade Center dust samples that they studied. These are red-gray chips, red on one side, gray on the other. So we have very unusual, they attracted to a magnet. So they got real curious and zoomed in 50,000 times to the red layer in a nuclear microscope and documented all this in a 25-page peer-reviewed paper. And this is, they found super thermite or nanothermite at the nanoscale. 1,000 times smaller these particles are than a human hair diameter. This is, we're talking iron oxide particles, rhomboidally shaped crystals, and aluminum platelets at the nanoscale. So these are the ingredients of thermite, iron oxide and aluminum powder. But very, very carefully made materials. They ignite in a differential scanning calorimeter, by the way. And what happens when they ignite? They produce liquid molten iron microspheres with the same chemical signature of the liquid molten iron microspheres found and documented in all the World Trade Center dust by the U.S. Geological Survey and R.J. Lee. So we know where those spheres came from, as if we didn't know, because they're found attached to partially ignited red-gray chips in the World Trade Center dust. So it's a fascinating set of irrefutable, self-corroborating data, experimentally reproducible, usable by a court of law to put a lot of people away for treason and mass murder. If we can get this material seen by a special grand jury, a process which we've already started, of course.
Very good. I was going to ask if anybody could bring any kind of lawsuit or any kind. It's kind of off the direct path we were taking, but if anybody could bring a lawsuit, wrongful death type of lawsuits, so we could put the evidence on the record. If anybody had thought about going that route.
Yeah, family members have submitted 60 exhibits of our evidence. Most of it is from our evidence at AE911truth.org, and much of it as seen in our video documentary, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. So family members and the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry and ourselves have submitted a petition to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan and pointed out to him that he's required by law to submit this to a special grand jury. And he's agreed in writing to do just that. But we don't have evidence that he's done it, so we've submitted now a mandamus action requiring him to prove to us that he has done it, and we're awaiting the judge's results on that action.
All right, if you're just joining us, we are talking with Richard Gage, AIA. He's an architect. He is a member of the American Institute of Architects and the founding member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and that is AE 9/11 Truth. And you may have seen some of the information that he's had. There's tons of information on the wasn't there a documentary? Forgive me for not being 100% certain. Was there? Did you guys do a documentary, or is there a book or some sort of where you compiled your findings?
Yeah, both. Yeah, the documentary is 9/11. That's 9/11 : Explosive Evidence. Experts Speak Out. We've assembled 40 high-rise architects, structural engineers, metallurgists, chemists, physicists, controlled demolition experts, all laying out the information that we're talking about here in graphic form. This is very graphically rich evidence, so it's a lot easier to see on YouTube. You can look at the 1-hour version of this documentary on YouTube for free. The 1.5-hour version is available on our website, along with the extended interviews of these experts. So lots to learn there. We also have the booklet, Beyond Misinformation, which you can download for free at beyondmisinformation.org, or buy the hard copy, which is a soft copy, actually, soft-bound copy at our website, ae911truth.org.
Now, Mr. Gage, as an architect, now I wanted to be I took a drafting class in high school, but I don't, and I done plenty of carpentry, and I wasn't an architect on 9/11, but I remember watching those towers fall, because everybody saw the towers fall, the 2 towers fall that day, and if you didn't see it live, it was played over and over and over. But I looked at it and I said, that's not how buildings fall. That's that seems like a controlled demolition. That doesn't make any sense. And then when you see the one building and then you see the second building act exactly the same, you're like, okay, well, even if I can suspend disbelief enough to accept the first building fell because of a plane striking it, a second plane struck in a totally different place, in a different way, at a different angle, and so it fell in the exact same way. Now, as an architect yourself, you weren't asleep that day. You knew with the rest of the world that this happened. When you saw that evidence, when you saw that video, how did you feel? What did you think? What was your initial take on that?
Yeah, well, I was just dumbfounded. I didn't know what to think. By the time these buildings fail, we realized, I was watching it on TV live, and we'd realized that we were talking about a terrorist attack. So we're in shock about that. No one thought the buildings were actually going to collapse. Firefighters go into burning buildings all the time. We've never had one collapse. And when they did collapse, they didn't look like what you'd expect when they did collapse. What we saw, so I didn't know what to think. I was, in retrospect, quite embarrassed that I didn't immediately call it a controlled demolition. But what we saw was, well, first of all, what we're told happened is not what we saw happen. What we're told is that the upper part, in the case of the North Tower, 10 stories above the point of jet plane impacts, we're told that drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself. Well, that just violates the laws of physics altogether, because the upper part is the weakest part, right? 3/8 inch thick steel at the top. These are virtual pyramids. It gets thicker and thicker until you have almost solid steel, huge columns, 52 inches by 22 inches down at the bottom in the case of the core columns. And the perimeter columns are 14-inch square steel tube columns, again, almost solid steel at the bottom, thinning to 3/8 inch thick or so at the top. So the upper part, it's like running a Volkswagen into a Mack truck. The Volkswagen does not destroy the Mack truck, even if you drop it from the top. All right. Mm-hmm. And you tilt the Mack truck up. So what we saw was the upper part, the Volkswagen, destroying itself. It's telescoping in on itself before there's any downward movement, crushing below. So something else is destroying the top of this building. And what we see is ejections of pulverized building materials and in squibs or isolated explosive ejections. And it is just liquefying the structure. In the case of the South Tower, dozens of squibs, which is a term in the controlled demolition industry for explosions, are ejecting out of the side. We show all this in our video that I mentioned. And then after it's destroyed, then what you have is a much more explosive forces driving laterally 4 to 8 ton structural steel sections laterally out of the towers, landing 600 feet in every direction, expelled at 80 miles an hour. Now, gravity works down, not out, and these are freely flying. We document this in our videos. Structural steel sections weighing 4 to 8 tons. So these are destroying the buildings. They're not causing them to collapse, but they're a lot of destruction all around the towers. And this is how the fires in Building 7, by the way, got caught, because these beams were there. There's liquid molten iron trailing, smoke clouds trailing them, producing this liquid molten iron that's tested later by nuclear physicist Stephen Jones and others. So this is an incredible set of evidence all by itself in the behavior of the building, in addition to the chemical evidence produced by the analysis of the slag on the ends of the beams given by sculptors to Professor Jones. And so then what you have is the building tearing itself apart, almost at free fall acceleration, almost as fast as the freely falling debris. Turns out to be 2/3 of free fall acceleration. That's accelerating straight down through the path of what should have been the greatest resistance, the 80,000 tons of structural steel beneath the point of jet plane impacts in the North Tower. In that case, 70,000 in the case of the South Tower, because that plane hit lower down, 30 stories down or so below the towers. So this destruction takes place all the way down, completely shattering the structural steel system, which is one of the proofs of the use of explosives, according to the National Fire Protection Guide for Explosion and Investigation, NFPA 921. It says, look for high-order damage characterized by the shattering of the steel structure. Well, that's what we have. Every column from every beam almost, except these units, wall units that are 3 columns tall by 3 spandrel panels wide, which are welded together, and then they're in turn bolted to each other. That's how this structure was, exterior perimeter structural steel frame was put together. So at the bottom, you don't have a stack of floors. There's 110 floors in each of these buildings, 4-inch and 8-inch thick concrete. We should have seen, at least 50 of them, if the rest of them were, pulverized, stacked like pancakes. We should have seen them, but no, we don't see 50. We don't see 10. We don't see 1 floor. Where are they? Well, they're not at the bottom. You see a twisted pile of steel 2-3 stories tall at the bottom of these towers. All the rest of the steel is blown outside the footprint of these buildings. The concrete is pulverized in midair to a fine powder, distributed again laterally outside the footprints of the buildings from river to river across lower Manhattan, 3 square miles in a blanket 3 or 4 inches thick. So if the steel is thrown outside the footprint of the building and the concrete is drifting outside the footprint of the building in this pulverized ash, then what's responsible for the crushing of the building? That's an extremely important question we all have to ask ourselves, particularly as building professionals. There's nothing left save, the contents of the building, which, by the way, is also outside the footprint of the building. Most of the people are outside the footprint of the building, 1,100 of them being completely vaporized, such there's no trace of. 6,000 pieces you can't fit into a small test tube. They're small enough to fit into a test tube. Only 300 whole bodies were found. So this is an incredibly explosive event, and the explosions are seen as squibs issuing out of the building 20, 40, even 60 stories below what we're told is a gravitational collapse. All these explosions, what's causing those? There's no reasonable fiction that we can even tie ourselves to try to explain this.
So you're an architect, so you're an expert in building structures that are strong and don't fall. But have you talked to many demolition experts who reverse what you do, and their expertise is how to take all the things that you put into making a building stand together, and they work on how to bring it down, right? Have you talked to many demolition experts and looked at these videos with them?
Yes, so the ones I've talked to are extremely suspicious. In fact, one of them appears in our video, 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. He was an explosives loader. He said, this looks exactly like a controlled demolition, especially Building 7, where you take out the core first, and half a second later, after you see the west penthouse and screen wall drop like a rock, half a second later, the overall building comes down. So that's what they do in controlled demolition, he says. You take out the core, and then that brings in the building on exterior perimeter structural steel frame in on itself. And that's what you see there. In the case of the towers, it was a very explosive event. where everything is blown outside the core. So it's the reverse. And so it becomes even more obvious, especially when you add in the 156 witnesses of explosions, the first responders that were recorded orally on tape within a month after 9/11. We finally, in August of 2005, received publicly the transcripts of these recordings documented by the New York Times, of all sources, and find that so many of these first responders are talking about seeing explosions, hearing explosions, being blown around in the building by explosions. They all thought the building was blown up. They didn't consider this a collapse. That all came later in the news media, and the NIST report, which had, in the case of the Twin Towers, $20 million and 3 years to fabricate their concoction of those buildings coming down by fires and by jet plane impacts.
So, Mr. Gage, when you're talking to demolition experts, is there the methods, like we mentioned, the likelihood or the evidence of the nanothermite and the intense heat that is way different than what would be a conventional controlled demolition? So were the two the two towers, were they destroyed differently, or would you say that the building 7 was more of a conventional controlled demolition, and then it seems to be kind of a high tech, like outside the normal standard way of destroying buildings? Like nobody's ever seen buildings come down as the towers did, but not building 7 was more of a conventional controlled demolition.
Yeah, it clearly was. It looks exactly like the old hotels in Las Vegas, for instance. It's rather extraordinary. And we have the towers, very, very different, extremely explosive event there.
Wow. So it wasn't jet fuel. There's never, ever been any high-rise building in either case anywhere in the world in the history of high-rise buildings to have ever collapsed due to fire. How long? What have they burned for days or hours and still stood?
Yeah, there's skyscrapers that have been completely engulfed by fire and no collapse. There's a collapse of the reason is these buildings are fireproofed. Now, there's been experimental buildings like the one in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Didn't have any fireproofing. It had incredible fuel loads because it was used as a squatter. And there we have something else going on. The chimney, in addition to what I just mentioned, the elevator shafts were chimneys because they were not fire protected and didn't have even elevators in them to kind of partially block the smoke. And so these buildings are extremely vulnerable to fires, but that's not comparing apples to apples there.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul, forgive me for a minute. I've got to check and see. I think I may have double booked myself today. Hold on a second.
Yep. So we're talking with architect Richard Gage, who is the expert on the 9/11 collapses, understanding the structure of the buildings and how they behaved. And he is the founding member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. So he's done tons of research and has gotten tons of other architects on board to put forth a call for a new investigation into the destruction of the World Trade Center towers, including the third building number 7.
Yeah, and Paul, Dustin, I did double book myself. So my apologies. I have a call that I've got to take. I'll make it up to you. We did get through all of the evidence that I wanted to share. So,
well, I was just going to start hitting the hard questions. We went through, like you said. I was just going to kind of freelance it right now, or improvise a little bit and just talk about.
I can come back in an hour with you if you want to resume.
We have a dinner appointment. We have a reservation, so we've got plans tonight. But the rest of what we're going to get into is just kind of like the who's and the hows and the whys, that kind of stuff, right? But
yeah, that's the fun stuff.
Yes.
So we'll do that another time. Call me at your convenience, and we'll make it work. My apologies.
No problem. Paul, did you want to speak with Mr. Gage before he departs? Okay.
Good, turn that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. It was really a big pleasure. We're honored to be with you tonight, and we wish you the best.
Okay. Again, thanks so much for the opportunity, and my apologies to your wonderful audience.
No apology needed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Gage. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. We'll come back for part 2.
All right.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
That was cool. Yeah.
That was an awesome interview. Yeah. There's so much he talks about, like we were trying up here to pull up all the video. There's fascinating videos of everything he's talking about. So it was difficult to try to, pull it out to show you guys the visualization of what he's talking about. But if you go, I know Paul just stepped away, so he's not able to pull it up. But if you go to their website, the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, there's tons of videos that break down, everything he's talking about with visual representations. It's really impressive. You just go into the evidence tab. There's a whole evidence tab for the Twin Towers and also the World Trade Center that talk about the free fall acceleration, explosions, steel sulfidation, everything. It's really in depth. I didn't know about this. I've heard about their group, but I've never gone on their website to check them out. So definitely go on, check it out. I'd love to go and look at his the documentary they made that he was talking about, the 9/11 explosive evidence that you can watch on YouTube. So yeah, that was I really enjoyed having him on.
You did a great job, Dustin.
Yeah, good job, man.
At asking those questions. And this is a very important topic, because this was kind of the catalyst that created all of this world government that we're seeing today, and that is being intensified even now by the coronavirus. Craziness that's happened. But yeah, that was awesome. And it's great that it ended this way, because he'll come back on the show now.
Yeah, there we got him. Yeah, now he'll come back. Yeah, that works out.
Yeah, we'll have some better questions. That maybe are some curveball questions, because we went over for people who might not know so much, and then maybe we can get into a little bit more of stuff that maybe people hadn't thought about, or some discoveries that he's made that are new. I wanted to open up the lines now, and so if you guys want to call in, now's the time to do it. 480-519-4999. That's 480-519-4999. And I would love to hear someone give an eyewitness account of that day. So I know there's people listening in from New York. I know people from Jersey could see it across. So just call in and give us your experience about that day. All right. Yeah, so 480-519-4999. And Logan's got some coffee in his blood, I can tell.
Yeah. No, he has some sweat.
It's coming out of my pores, man. It's sweating up here. It was fine, because during the interview...
108.
Yeah, 108. Yeah, so hotter than yesterday. During the interview, we had the computer... it is a real thing when I said the computer shuts down and I can't pull up videos. That 100% happened. I had to unplug it, put it right in front of the AC unit and cool it off, and then I put it back and it started working again.
So we're gonna start a GoFundMe account right now and try to raise money for an air conditioner. I think we should start that on the show.
You have an air conditioner. The problem is you turn it off.
Right.
But I can't, because there's this loud hum.
I can't have the hum.
But we could have a nice air conditioner going up here, as long as it's...
You know what I need? We need one of those... we need one of those... The things that at Dutch Brothers, the people that wear those little ice packs, you know?
Yeah.
The vest with the ice packs in it. That'd be
There
sweet.
you go.
All right, so we have a caller here. We're just going to plug him
we're just
straight.
gonna put him right through.
We're gonna do it live.
Yeah. All right,
Hey,
you're
you
live with Framing the World.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it
Good,
going,
man.
man?
Who is this?
Hey, I'm calling from California. I just wanted to give a quick plug for.
That's more important than your name. That you're calling from California.
Well, I mean,
he doesn't want to give out his name.
I don't really want to give out my name.
Yeah.
But I did want to give a quick plug for probably the best 9/11 documentary, best researched doc that's probably out there that people really need to see. It's Empire Unmasked by Ryan Dawson. It gets into a lot of details that a lot of people leave out of the conversation, and it's a really well-researched 5-hour doc, and I really recommend people check it out.
A 5-hour documentary.
Oh yeah,
That's
right
pretty
here?
in depth. No, I'm trying to.
I mean, he goes.
Empire
I mean,
Unmasked. That's
yeah, I mean, he goes
interesting.
back
That's
and
you think it's kind of a foreshadowing of today?
how
Because,
so?
because of the
No,
mask.
he's asking you. Oh, mask.
Everything goes back to the mask right now.
So,
But
Empire
yeah, I
Unmasked.
mean, it goes back, into the Safari Club of intelligence agencies, and how it ties in with the first World Trade Center bombing, and a lot of back history that a lot of people maybe don't know or don't have, that lends a lot of context.
So how did
to
you
these
see this
attacks.
video, California?
I just came across, when I was, getting into 9/11 stuff, and there's a lot of conflicting, variants of this of what exactly happened,
Mhm.
and it's hard to separate.
Like what?
The wheat.
Tell us what
Well-
you took away.
well,
in
like,
the end.
I mean, there's you got people talking about space lasers and stuff, now.
In that,
And
wow.
I mean, like,
Oh, Richard
don't.
Gage is calling back. Hey, maybe he's
All right,
back.
That's more important than.
Yes.
All right, man.
but,
Well, have a good day.
Empire Unmasked. All right.
Okay, he didn't call back. Oh, I totally declined? Oh, no.
Just call him back. We'll mute you.
Back. No, we're going with it. Well, okay. I don't know. It's the clock's count. The clock's counting, but there we are, Mr. Gage. Okay, so go ahead and mute our phone. We're not taking calls anymore. We have Richard Gage, architect, AIA. That the Richard, the AIA is because you are a member of the American Institute of Architects, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so did you just go ahead and tell your next appointment that you were just having such a good time talking to us and
Yep. And plus, it turns out that they only needed a short call, so that was it.
Oh, very good. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and put you back looking at the icon again. All right. Paul says for production he doesn't want to see my face. So, okay, sir. Well, everybody, thank you very much for sticking with us. We had we're gonna fill that with a commercial break in between our last segment with Richard Gage, who is the founding member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and he has been so gracious to join us and even to call us back after having to depart shortly. And we went through some questions, and he explained to us the evidences that he's uncovered in the past 15 years since first learning about Building 7. And so we've gone through a lot of information and facts. And what we were just about to get into was, we were just getting to the end of the interview, and he had to go. But Mr. Gage, what's happened recently? What's the most recent developments in your work?
Well, we've now just issued the final report of a major university study. They issued it. We're publishing it everywhere. The University of Alaska in Fairbanks has produced a 130-page finite element analysis report seeking to confirm or not confirm the results of the NIST report about the collapse of Building 7, the third tower that came down on 9/11. Of course, they claim that it came down by normal office fires. Well, NIST produced a lot of data about Building 7, and we got a lot of the rest of the data and provided it to the university. And for the last 4 years, they've been engaged in this study. And their conclusion is that fire could not possibly have brought this building down in the manner that it came down. In fact, the only thing that could bring it down was the near simultaneous failure of all of its columns in the building.
Yes.
I mean, this is incredible. What can do that? Does fire do that? No, fire doesn't have that kind of precision. What does?
Right.
Controlled demolition, right? So this is really important work.
So, have you had anybody, this is a question, we've got our chat going, we're streaming live to YouTube. So we have the chat going and people have, they put some questions in the chat. I've even passed some on to you already. One point somebody made, he was an eyewitness there, and he was mentioning how there was a very clear metallic smell in the air of Lower Manhattan. And you talked about those microglobular iron balls. So that would explain the metallic smell or taste that people experienced that day as they were inhaling these parts of metal.
What's more common as a characterization of the odor from the World Trade Center dust is sulfur, a kind of a rotten smell. Well, sulfur is added to thermite to become thermate, and so John Feel is one of the many witnesses of the sulfur smell, and he said he couldn't get it out of his system. It haunted him, the smell of sulfur. Well, there's no other source for sulfur in the World Trade Center save thermate, which is where you add sulfur to thermite. NIST was asked about all the sulfur that was documented, not just by witnesses that smelled it, but as an ingredient that was invading the steel at the World Trade Center. This sulfur and liquid molten iron, and so this is only attributable by the addition of sulfur to thermite. So an incendiary works by means of heat, whereas explosives, by the way, work by means of concussive force. So this is yet another prime piece of evidence for the destruction of these towers by thermite or nanothermite, as we've discussed. These red-gray chips lead us to also find that nanothermite was responsible for bringing down the towers.
And so what do you recommend? Okay, I have another question that before I get to that question. Who have, besides people that you talk about, like in your I would say seminars or in your presentations where you're able to present the evidence and show people video of Building 7, and, as far as your audience being architects and engineers, but have you been able to convince anybody in government at all? Do you know if anybody has officially been able to see the controlled demolition aspect of Building 7, for example?
Well, we've given dozens and dozens and dozens of different elected representatives in Congress or their staffers our presentation, and we've had a lot of eyebrows raised, but we can't seem to get action out of that open-mindedness. We've also received a lot of angry responses.
I imagine.
People are not open-minded about evidence. It's very surprising. They get personally indignant, and a lot of them, or they just can't deal with the information psychologically. it changes your worldview. I mean, this thing turns your world upside down, because all of a sudden, if you acknowledge the evidence, you're in a position of having to respond appropriately to it, because it implies that this is some sort of an inside operation. Obviously, we're not talking about 19 fundamentalist hijackers anymore getting explosives inside the towers. We're talking about a very sophisticated operation involving security for the World Trade Center towers, whom we also, of course, want an investigation of, and the investigation of Ace Elevator, who had the largest elevator modernization in the world going on during the 9 months prior to 9/11. And this was well documented, by the way, in Elevator World, the magazine, in March of 2001. They documented this, and USA Today documented the fact that 85 of the employees, all the employees from Ace Elevator, fled the World Trade Center after the planes at the towers. It was quite a scandal. Well, Ace Elevator came out of nowhere to get this contract from Otis Elevator, who had installed and had been maintaining these up to this time of this modernization. They should have been the ones to work on this project. So very, very important additional research needs to be done with those companies. Anyway, now I forgot what the question was. I hope I answered.
Oh, no, that was had you been able to convince, I guess, the people of the government, I think, maybe? But, you know, that was leading into what I wanted to talk about. So it's relevant that you went down that trail, and that would be the how of it, right? So if we suspect that as you mentioned before, the support columns would have to simultaneously or near simultaneously, because I've seen the Discovery Channel and I've seen those videos on whatever the cable show was, where they show you the buildings coming down and they show you all of the intense it's scientific and very professional, and these guys, they just get it to us. So they have to go through, and there's a chain. Now, this is the dynamite or the TNT or whatever you said, the RDX or something like that. Those types of explosives where there has to be a chain, and everybody's wide open. The building's knocked down, the glass is removed, and the pillars are exposed. And they go through with the Bobcat, and they're knocking out walls, and they're doing everything because it's a controlled demolition. That they're not trying to hide. But we say if, tongue-in-cheek, but if 9/11 were a controlled demolition, then they didn't have the luxury of doing it. They would have to do it by night, or some people speculate that it was even built with those types of things. But then if you're talking about using high-tech, unseen, like next-generation, futuristic, nearly explosive mechanisms, like using the nanothermite and things that are just really expensive. Would they have done that in the was it 1973 when they built the towers? They couldn't have put them in there then, so they would have to get in there and get to these. So I've thought about that, and there's obviously the evidence is gone. It's been taken to China, which is maybe something you want to mention about how the evidence was removed.
Well, let's take it one step at a time, because
Yeah.
I can only do a couple of things in my head at a time.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah.
You have the elevator modernization 9 months going on, which would give a group of operatives exclusive access to the columns and beams in the building, one elevator hoistway at a time, because those columns and beams are right next to the elevator hoistways in the interior core. So that's really important. Plus, you're assuming perhaps that the occupancy is 100% in the towers. Well, many researchers have found that the occupancy rate was, half full, which is why so few people, died. Many expected much greater mortality rate. So that's an important factor. The other thing you mentioned at the end there, what was that?
Maybe the how the evidence was removed?
Yeah, because you'd expect easily the three largest structural failures in modern history, all unexpected, that they would be the largest studies of structural failures in modern history. And yet most university students know nothing about the conclusions about either of the three of them, and none of them know anything about Building 7. And it's true for building professionals as well. So virtually none of them. And so yet starting 2 weeks after 9/11, the steel was carted away from, starting with Building 7, at 400 truckloads a day lined up to take this debris out of there and put on barges, which were then sent to China for recycling, all before investigators could get a proper investigation, get their hands on it, and do forensic examinations.
So who would have had the authority to order the cleanup?
Yeah, they're pointing fingers at each other.
Okay.
You've got FEMA pointing the fingers at the mayor pointing fingers at FEMA, Mayor Giuliani. So it's quite a trail to try to follow.
Right. Sounds like kind of like a con job.
But Congress, there's one congressman in particular. He was from New York, and he was saying this is borderline criminal. Well, it was actually criminal. It was the illegal destruction of evidence in a crime scene, prompting Bill Manning, editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering magazine, to cry out crucial evidence that could answer many questions is on the slow boat to China, showing an astounding ignorance of government officials to the value of a thorough scientific investigation. The destruction of evidence must stop, but of course it didn't.
Right, and the lack of current engineers and architects being trained, and they would take this information and say, well, look how the buildings failed, and they would educate future generations of architects and engineers to overcome the potential I don't know what the odds are, 3 buildings would fall in the same day, which I don't know is there calculated odds that this could have ever happened?
Yeah, it's been calculated, but since it's never happened before,
right,
the odds are astronomically high.
Right. So the fact that they should educate people a little bit on, say, hey, this pancake effect is real, this top-down type of, things falling from, into their own footprint, that could happen. So make sure that you do your due diligence and build the building to withstand jet fuel. So we talked a little bit about the how. What's the why?
You mean why did they plan 9/11?
Well, you've talked to many people. I have. Many people have an opinion. Do you have an opinion that you would want to share with us?
Well, first of all, we're experts in the destruction of we're not experts. We have evidence that we've assembled that we provide to the public, the media, elected representatives, and the building professions. As to the evidence that the towers were brought down by explosive controlled demolition. So there's a whole lot of why questions here. The obvious conspiracy that it takes to plan and execute the destruction of these buildings lends itself to the destruction of the Pentagon and the loss of the airplane near Shanksville as well. All of these are part of the 9/11 project. All of them are performed under extremely shady and as well as evidence-filled conspiracies. So you have other sources of information and research that can help with the other 2 planes, all the planes, for instance, Pilots for 9/11 Truth. And you have David Ray Griffin's excellent work. works, 12 books on the subject of 9/11 truth now. New Pearl Harbor, 9/11, New Pearl Harbor, for instance. And they go more into the whys. I mean, we're technical and building professionals. But if you just look and see, what happened as a result of 9/11, you learn a lot of information. If you just follow the money, one way to do that, by the way, is in an hour, is to watch James Corbett's excellent film, 9/11, Follow the Trillions. It's not just about gold heists in the basement, but about bonds, billions of dollars of bonds that were due the day following 9/11. You've got also Donald Rumsfeld the evening before 9/11, the day before 9/11, I think, announcing a war on missing money at the Pentagon, $2.3 trillion in missing money. Of course, the next day, what do you get? A $48 billion increase in the Pentagon budget the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So there's you have the invasion of two countries with the taking over of the oil in Iraq, the taking over of the opium trade in Afghanistan, where 90% of the opium comes from, which represents, according to many researchers and UN statistics, 4 times the profits of all the oil companies put together. So there's a whole lot of answers to the question why, but we don't have the details on those answers. I would refer you to the sources that I talked to. As far as the WHO, you might also refer to an excellent book by Kevin Ryan, Another 19 Suspects.
All right. Another 19. We're trying to share this with our audience because we all have these questions. Another 19 suspects. So, because I know that your expertise is in the technical side of the architecture and you work with the engineers, but I know that you've been involved in many different projects, films, books. You've convinced a lot of different people. As you mentioned, you probably had interactions with the pilots for 9/11 Truth. Are you participating in another film that's coming out soon? Is it Dylan Avery?
Yes, Dylan, the maker of Loose Change, who's won awards, film awards, including Black and Blue, about New York police violence or abuse. He has finished the early work on the 5-minute version of his 45-minute film that he's making on Building 7, specifically the creation of this 4-year major university study, finite element analysis on Building 7, by Leroy Halsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country. So it features him and his team of PhD researchers. And their conclusions, which, of course, as we mentioned, that fire could not have brought this building down, as NIST claimed. So the 5-minute version starts next week on PBS, airing. And it is, we're very excited about that. Thousands of our supporters have raised enough funds now to air this to 3 million viewers on PBS. And then in a month or two, at the latest, we have the 45-minute version. This film's called 7.
Okay, so that's going to be Dylan Avery, 7. So keep an eye out for that, folks. We'll let you know as soon as we know when you can check that out. So, Mr. Gage, we're very grateful that you joined us, and especially that you gave us the bonus call, and we're able to come back and help us to conclude a little bit more. What should people do? How can they help you? What do we do?
I would encourage people to first get informed at our website, ae911truth.org, and know the evidence. Look at the on YouTube, the 1 hour version of our 90-minute film, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, is there. After you're informed and you realize that these are explosive demolitions and that we are talking about the hijacking of our democracy through 9/11, not dissimilar from the current hijacking of our democracy and our constitutional rights and the destruction of our economy in the current medical tyranny that we're under. We also have the opportunity for people to take 9/11 and wake people up with it. And we're doing that. We travel all around the country all the time and provide this evidence to as many people as we can. We want you to join AE 9/11 Truth, become a member for $5 a month. It'll really help us out. Just go to ae911truth.org, and there is a donate button there. We need your support. It's the only support we have is these $5 and up type donations. So thank you, everybody who has done that. If you haven't availed yourself of that opportunity to serve your community, if you can't do that, join us as a volunteer. We have lots of volunteer activities available on our website as well.
Right. You can become a member, subscribe to the newsletter. So, Mr. Gage, we're very grateful that you joined us. And this investigation, hopefully we'll get another investigation. Hopefully we'll be able to uncover the truth. And when we get that opportunity, God willing, we just pray that the evidence that you've worked so hard to compile is able to make the changes that need to happen that only the truth can bring. So all the best to you, sir. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Appreciate it so much. You take care.
You as well. Good night.
Night.
Man, that was awesome. We get to come back. Paul's getting our shots back up.
All right, cool.
Yeah, no, that was cool having him back on and kind of finish that off. That was awesome.
Yeah, man, this job's costing me because I always subscribe and donate to all these things that we do and buy stuff off of people's websites. So as soon as I get done, it's like I go and make a donation or sign up for the thing. So
yeah, we pulled up, Paul, if you want to show my screen, we pulled up his 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, the free 1 hour version that he was talking about. Here's the trick with YouTube, right? Because I'm noticing this as I'm trying to pull up the stuff that they're talking about.
You spell searches wrong on purpose?
Well, obviously, you're in the heat of the moment. Okay. Literal heat. Okay. You're going to misspell some things.
Just spell like a 4-year-old.
Okay. You just bang it out. But you have to go to the filter, right? So what they do is what the filter's normally set on is relevance. And if you do the relevance, it's the official narrative. It's all the National Geographic, Smithsonian Channel. They're not going to give you the real stuff, right? You got to go to view count. You go to view count.
Oh, and then the good stuff pops up.
That's where the good stuff pops up. Yeah. So click the filter, go to view count. That's where you get the good stuff.
Wow.
Yep.
And I thought I was the expert on searching.
No.
Man,
you need Karen Rodriguez to even get your thumbnails right, man. So, all right.
Speaking of, make sure to go to our house, guys, and support Karen over there by subscribing to her channel. She's on Patreon. You can support her over there. But I have really good news, real quick, Dustin. I got really good news.
You turned the air conditioning back on?
No, it's off. We're hot again.
We are $7 up, guys, on the month. So thank you guys for supporting us on Patreon. We were negative at the beginning of this live stream, but now we're positive $7. So thank you so much.
Wonderful people.
Yeah.
All right. So you're probably going to cut that interview off and make sure that
I'll cut that up.
Yeah, perfect.
Does anyone want to call in and chat with us while we're here for another 15 minutes or so? We'll take
we really want
maybe my wife can call in and tell me when she gets here. Because
I'm ready to eat. Are you ready to eat, Dustin?
What are you guys eating?
I don't know. Don't tell anybody.
Don't worry about it.
They'll stalk us, man. Yeah. No, where are we going, Paul or Logan?
We are going to the Pepper Mill. This episode was brought to you by the Pepper Mill.
What is that?
It's just like a mom and pop restaurant that looked pretty good. Gonna take.
You got to be
the loans
careful
out.
with going to eat with Logan, though.
What does
He
that
once
mean?
brought us to this Chinese place.
How dare you? You know what? You know what? I'm so sick of hearing about this Chinese restaurant. You know, I've hit it out of the park every time I get. Look at me, okay? I'm a big fella, all right? I hit it out of the park on restaurants all the time. We go to one weird Chinese spot.
Dude, it was
The food was
weird.
still good. The food was still good.
At the Chinese place, it
was good. Yes.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, well, you can't mess up Chinese food. It's all the same, okay?
No, you messed it up. No one even ate their food.
What are you
remember?
talking about? Everyone ate it.
Okay, he's
Everyone
changing
ate it.
reality.
Ridiculous. Everyone throws a little fit and wants to complain. Everyone loves it. All the other time, the food's great, and then one time you go bad, they won't let you hear the end of it. It's ridiculous.
Triggered.
Yeah.
Triggered.
You know what's
for
so
real,
funny
right?
is that you're like everybody. Like this happens, Logan.
Yeah. Does this happen
Like, it
often?
No,
seems
to
this,
like
you?
no,
everybody
no. It
does
does.
this,
Look
dude.
it. Paul knows this. We've gone on enough mission trips to know. If you hang out with me, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna eat well, okay? Because I make sure that those things happen when we go out. So one time, we go to
If
one
you don't
weird
eat
Chinese
well, you
restaurant
can't
after
have a good
church,
time.
and it's like,
Yeah.
throw a fit.
Well, I don't even like Chinese food, so
Yeah, see, it's just you're hungry a half hour
I don't
later
really like
anyways.
Chinese food either.
yeah. So maybe I like it. I like it, but
Oh, there's someone calling
it's
in.
risky.
All right,
It's
we missed it.
risky. Oh,
So
you
call
missed-
back. We call back again.
Yeah,
We'll
just
get
call
you back.
back.
on
You
there.
let it ring too many
We
times.
tried calling back once, and that ended up weird.
And the guy really wanted to talk to us.
I know.
He ended up calling us back again.
Yeah.
All right. So, Richard Gage, nice guy. You're doing a really good job. I'm glad. I haven't really met many people that we've interviewed that I didn't like. Everybody seems to be on their best behavior, and everybody seems to get along pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they might not like us after, like when they hang up and watch the thing, and they see this like this. Talk.
Well, they just see you going rogue. That's the part that gets us in trouble.
Well, it's like Chinese food, right?
All right, hold on.
It's just like sometimes you
Just
win,
answer it.
sometimes
Let's
you
just
don't.
We
call-
got someone
That's
calling
how
in
you
from
do it.
Lebanon,
You hang out with
Pennsylvania.
me and Logan, you're
From
gonna eat well and
Pennsylvania.
have a good time, and
Yeah, that's
go.
right.
All right, you're live with Frame the World.
Hi, this is Sarah. I'm calling from Pennsylvania.
Sarah?
And, I actually call Sarah, yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
And I'm actually calling you. I tried to call yesterday, but I called too late. The show was ending, and so this isn't really related to your interview today. But you have been talking yesterday about subscribing, notifications, to make sure we see all the live streams. And I actually have been watching since the beginning, pretty much since the beginning of your live streams. But I've been subscribed in with notifications, but I've never once received a single notification that
Yeah.
you've gone live.
So many people tell me this. I'm being censored really heavily because if you
Yeah.
even Google any of my movies that I make, I'm not until like page 5. Like my channel is just like totally shadow banned. And
Yeah.
I reapply. So not only that is they won't let me be monetized either. And I reapply, and they just for 2 months now they just don't answer nothing. It's just like, yeah, I don't know why they just hate my channel.
Well, and I wanted to mention, because I also watch Pastor McMurtry's wife, Cassandra, her Gently Lived Sisters channel.
Yeah.
And she has a program, I think she says it's like $25 a month, but she sends a text out, and the program's set up that it automatically texts everybody on a list. So I didn't know if that was something you'd want to consider.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. I should talk to her about that. I definitely would love to do that. If you're a Patreon supporter, it does send you an email too, right to your email every time we go live as well.
Oh, yeah. And my husband is a Patreon supporter, but he's not always forthcoming.
Oh, but
in that information.
it goes to his email, to the black hole.
Yeah, he knows. He always knows. He always knows, but he doesn't always tell me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to let you know that, because I don't know how many people out there are not getting notification, and I thought that might be another option for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you
That's
so
a
much
great
for your
idea,
support.
Sarah.
Yeah,
We're
it's a
gonna do
great
it.
idea.
We're gonna do it.
All right,
God
thank
bless you. Have a good day.
We'll see if it works.
Yep.
And Sarah, if it works and we get an uptick, Paul's gonna give you a T-shirt.
Yeah, I gotta go check that out.
So, you know, what was also cool is that Mr. Gage was, you know, he's I don't want to say hoodwinked, but he's not hoodwinked about what's going on with the whole certificate of vaccination identification program currently. Looks like my camera died.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I'll go fix it. You want me to just turn it back on?
No, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, he's not. What about the other camera over here? Oh well.
He's gone.
All right.
He's coming down.
Well,
there.
he made a mention of how there is currently, you know, what's happening with this all the garbage going on.
No,
right
he
now.
did
So
kind of. Yeah, he kind of made that point of the he got to. Yeah, he did. So it'd be interesting to hear his opinion on that as well.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to. We're gonna be wrapping it up shortly. Our families are coming to pick us up because Logan, he lost a bet. So I said, "You're gonna."
Is that what we're telling him?
No, we're not doing that. We don't gamble. We don't bet. So we got our families coming. But what was I saying? What were we talking about?
We were talking about Mr. Gage and that how he had mentioned, he kind of briefly slipped about or mentioned
He mentioned it. Yeah,
the medical.
Yeah, he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
He knows what they're doing.
No,
he knows
he's
what
like he's definitely based, as you would say, Dustin.
Yeah.
You think?
Sure, yeah. You know what else I appreciate is the fact that as an architect, okay, everybody, in all fairness, as an architect, when he saw the buildings come down, he said, "I'm kind of embarrassed to say that it didn't even connect, that it was a controlled demolition." And so, you know, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I was like on that day, like, that's a controlled demolition. I just remember thinking to myself, that's weird. That's not how buildings, that's not what that's weird. It's like, you know, when a dog hears a weird sound and, you know, and they tilt their head. I kind of just had that moment where it's like, this is something's fishy, you know? So,
it's also such a traumatic experience that it, you know,
Yeah.
your rational brain isn't thinking about that because you're just there. Everyone's around you. You're just kind of pumped up, and especially like the days after, there's all this patriotism, and it just kind of took over in a rush.
yeah.
So you're not really.
That wasn't what I was
thinking
doing.
About, no, I understand.
I didn't
that.
have
We're
that.
talking about like, you know, Mr. Gage. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm sure the vast majority of Americans aren't thinking about, you know, like even the rare possibility that that could have been, you know, staged or or planned, because there wasn't any. It wasn't a big. There hadn't been a false flag event like that to that grand of scale. You know, for years before that, you know, like now we can see, like when stuff comes up. We're
Now,
like
the coronavirus stuff happens.
Yeah,
we're like,
you look at it with a jaded eye, but back then, no.
Yeah.
They're still young and fresh.
What's going to happen? Real stuff's going to happen eventually, and we're going to be like, oh no. I didn't believe him this time. It's like the boy who called wolf, you know, where they're like, oh, that actually was a real problem. I mean, like, obviously the riots, like if people start rioting and start burning the cities down, you know, you're going to notice that. Like, you're going to see the bodies, right? So, or at least not see the bodies. You'll see the carnage, which is metaphorically, it's like seeing the bodies. But, yeah, so you'll see that. They'll report on that. Of course, they'll spin it in such a way. And yeah, but okay, so just friends at home, those watching later, you know, look into it. Maybe be curious to see if there's any, like, what the story says, like if maybe that guy wasn't even a cop. Okay, there, I said it. The guy sitting on the guy, like, was he even a cop? Because, you know, I do not put it past the news for them to get. Yeah, because Paul wants that.
Yeah, I don't know why he puts it at me. Like,
okay, well, not to say interrupt. So, like, if the guy, because they could just make a video of this guy doing all of that stuff. His twin comes out, and the reason they do that is because then they can just roll it out. Those things happen. I'm not saying guys like there's no virus. There's viruses. So, buildings do not fall free fall speed, right?
Jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams.
You know, I think Epstein's still alive. I don't think he was murdered. I don't even think he was alive. I don't think he died. I don't even think he spent a moment in jail cell. That's my opinion on Epstein. So, you know, Epstein didn't kill himself because, you know, because he's in the club. And
Dustin is the true conspiracy.
Oh yeah,
theorist.
we went to LA Me and Dustin shared a room at a hotel when we went to LA for the ordination of Pastor. Yes, that guy.
Pastor Mejia?
Mejia, sorry. And that was that day we woke up to the news of Epstein, committed suicide. And right off the bat, Dustin was like, no way. They got him. Like, no way he did it. Like, he's alive on a bunker. So, like, from day one, Dustin's like.
We definitely had the money to do that.
Yeah. And they even show, and then the story just doesn't even add up, of course. But if you ask anybody on the news, and if this isn't evidence in itself, if you just call the news like they would ever have a hotline, you're like, hey, I got a question. I missed the story, but whatever happened to Jeffrey Epstein? I always, they're like, oh yeah, he died, he killed himself, he hung himself, and didn't you know? And you're like, yeah, and they're like, yeah, but the camera shut off, so we don't have any of the footage and everything. And
all the security cameras.
And they'll just tell you, they'll just keep going straight down the narrative, And I'm like, but 9/11 with the whole thing with the terrorists, and they're like, oh yeah, 19, if you ask anybody on the news from the top down, to the whore who sits there and spits out the news, to the executive in the office, they're going to tell you the exact same story that, the 9/11 story is going to be the exact same story they spat out, the day before. The day before 9/11, they already had the story put together, and they put it out on 9/11 like, it's like 9:15. They're like, oh, our guys are, because as the media, we just happen to know that the CIA suspects the FBI thinks maybe it could be this guy, Osama bin Laden,
I think the most obnoxious thing is that they found the passports.
Yeah.
Like the passport story. That's the most obnoxious, egregious one. Like, really, guys?
It melted the building, but the passports
we found the passports. Like, you saw the video we showed. We're just like, just explosions of dirt and debris are like going city block in seconds. But no, we found a couple of passports, so we know it's legit.
Yeah, and then they caught Osama bin Laden because of SEAL Team 6, right? Or 7 or whatever.
Yeah, who by the way, like 6 months or months later, all died in an Apache helicopter, or in a helicopter crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally normal. That seems.
But all of their twins are busy still being Navy SEALs.
Twins.
It's like they're just like, it's like, what, man? So many important people are twins. I wish I have twins, because then they'll amount to something. They'll do something with their lives. And, one just happens to have to die. So everybody on the news, they just totally give you the same story. It's the same narrative. 19 years later, they'll just give it right to you. And so when the news is the one to tell you, the Chinese media comes and tells you that, and then they leak it to our media, and then they're like, oh yeah, there's an outbreak gonna happen, and and then you hear this, you're like, okay, all right, come on, let's hear it, come on, let's go along. And then everybody just, and then here's the other, this is the other evidence. They go and tell a story, it's a narrative, and nobody at all has any evidence at all, but they put it out there, and then what happens is everybody, the hordes and masses, just go, well, this is what we're doing now, and they just all go straight through, and everybody's just now going along that way with it. And you sit back, and you don't even have to move. You just have to sit back, and they say, hey, do you believe this? And you go, I conditionally accept your offer if you can provide me some good evidence. Well, don't you know the evidence? We got it from China. The news media told us. Or don't you know the evidence? Like, it's the passport on the ground. And you're like, okay, yep. So you failed to provide the conditions that I need to actually give you something I'm not accepting it. I'm just going to leave it out there because you offered and I didn't accept. Going back to our talk yesterday, offer acceptance. So, but here's what they do all the time. And this is what they're doing to you, people. They're offering you this narrative, this whole story. And they're like, hey, this is what happened on 9/11. And everybody's like, okay, I'll accept that. And most people just go right along. They silently acquiesce, and they just totally go right along and go, hey, didn't you hear? And they don't respond. They don't think about it. They don't give it any time in their yeah, okay, so I got to answer this chat comment. But they don't give it any time in their frontal cortex to go and process it and actually think it through. And they just go right along with the whole story without maybe asking for some conditions to be fulfilled. And, nothing wrong with that, but I would suggest that when everybody comes along, when something comes along, especially the news media, and then especially when they come along and they, they expose themselves, like they have like an insider leaking something, like that's even more reason to go, okay, well, what's the, because there are many layers deep into fooling people. So a good con man's, he's going to know that if people don't believe him, then he's going to give them the opportunity to believe and re-engage again. So he's going to maybe have a plan B around that. And so when the news media is telling you something, you might just have to sit back and go, well, I'm not going to necessarily set my seal that is true. I'm just going to hold back my seal, because there's no rule that says that you just have to sign off on it. And there's no sin to not just believe. I mean, I know 1 Corinthians 13 says, love or charity believeth all things, right? You don't believe, that's stupidity, believeth everything. I don't believe the words of a liar. So if I know somebody's a total liar, so taking that out of context is if some guy comes along, he's like, listen, I've lied to you. I'm a thief. I'm a crook. I've got blood on my hands right now. And so I just want you to believe me. And I'm like, hey, I'm just like, the end of the law is charity. So I'm just going to jump to that part, and I'm just going to believe you, sir. That's stupidity. Obviously charity, believing all things, is believing the people that you love, giving the people that you love and those people in your life that are your brethren and your family members. You're giving them, they're your brothers. They're the ones that you're supposed to turn the other cheek and forgive 70 times, 7 times. So I don't think it's a bad thing if somebody says, hey, you want to come along and swallow this? And you go, I'm not going to partake today. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just come along and saying, hey, they say that's what, but I believe, based on the people telling me, that I'm not going to accept that. And I don't think it's bad that I don't accept it. I just would like some more conditions to be fulfilled before I do. And it seems like those conditions, well, if they are fulfilled, I'll accept it. And when it comes to believing the media, I'm still waiting.
All right, man. You ready to jam?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It was a fun one.
Yeah, it was great, guys. Thank you so much for everyone tuning into tonight's program. Make sure you subscribe to our Patreon account if you haven't. And also, don't forget to support our new movie we're doing. We're making the 10th film here. I'm planning, just scheduled a trip up to, I don't even want to say it, but a state. And I'm going to be going out and shooting some interviews. So I'm going to spend a week out there shooting interviews. And so any support you guys could give me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's program. God bless, guys.